Hi, everyone. I'm Jim Huling, and it's a real pleasure to be with you today on this episode of Execution Insights. Now, today, I'd really like to talk about something that, frankly, doesn't get said very often, even though almost every leader I've ever known or met feels it deeply all the time. It's the constant pull to take over. You know what I mean? When there's uncertainty, we step in. When there's confusion, we give out answers. It's our job to push the pace. It's our job to raise and hold the standard. All of these things pull on us. And this pull doesn't only come from the job. Let's be honest, some of it comes from us. And if we're willing to be completely candid, being the center feels productive, right? I mean, it feels responsible. It feels the way leadership is supposed to work, or so we think. But over time, you know what? Something shifts. Leadership in this way stops being about the work, and eventually it starts just orbiting around the leader. Even teams with the best intentions will have people asking not what's the best answer, they'll be saying, what will the leader approve most easily? And you know, when that happens, things feel smoother in the beginning and more aligned. And you know what? It's because they are. They're more aligned to what the leader wants rather than being aligned to the best answer. The hard truth is that when we lead in that way, they've actually just aligned with us because we've become the thinker. We've become the decider. We've become the driver of everything that's happening on the team. And when that happens, I've often been surprised at how engaged a team can look. But you know, it's not really engagement. In reality, they've just learned to comply. Now, I like to call this style of leadership a genius with 1,000 helpers. We know where we're the genius at the center, and everybody else exists to simply carry out the directives that we offer. And I've not only seen it commonly used, I've seen it quietly kill ownership, even in talented, committed teams. So here's the truth that's changed my thinking about this. When leadership requires you or me to be at the center, real ownership can't exist anywhere else. Now, don't get me wrong, that model creates movement, it gets things done, but what it rarely does is create ownership. And ownership is what actually sustains results and makes it not all about the leader. Now, I want to be careful and be candid and say that leading from within, leading through the results of the team, it's far harder than just giving directives and giving orders. For one thing, it asks us to have confidence when we don't always have control, or it asks us to have clarity without the ability to dominate every detail. And I think hardest of all, it asks us to trust even when we don't have the kind of constant confirmation that an authority-based directive style can give us. More than 2,000 years ago, one of my favorite authors, a Chinese philosopher named Lao Tzu, captured this idea that I'm talking about today in a single sentence. It's always been one of my most treasured proverbs. He said, when the work of the greatest leader is done, the people will say, we did it ourselves. And by the way, that's not poetic language. That's a leadership warning. You see, at the end of the day, a leader's real work isn't execution. A leader's real work is creating the conditions for execution to be possible. It's about building a team that can think for themselves, decide for themselves, act on their own recognizance with or without force being applied from the leader. Now, for you and me, that means our role becomes making sure the objectives are unmistakably clear, of course, and ensuring that people have real authority and resources and context to be able to get the job done. And maybe most importantly of all, we're the ones that have to remove roadblocks and organizational friction that might slow the team down. But outside of that, our main job is to then have the discipline to stay out of the way. Now, I know how hard this is. And I also know that this approach demands focus and restraint. Because when things slow down even a little bit, or when someone struggles, or when the outcome feels it might be at risk, what do you and I do? We jump in, right? Both hands, both feet. In every moment, every instinct we have is to step in, provide the answers, get things moving again until we're sure that the team is back on track. But here's one of the most important things I've ever learned. That moment when there's just a little bit of struggle or the team is finding their own way, that's often the moment when ownership is trying to emerge. And if you and I panic, if we step in too quickly, we may solve the immediate problem, but you know what else we do? We steal the opportunity for growth. In fact, we reinforce with the team a kind of dependency on us that can actually keep them from ever rising to their highest level. And here's one more and equally uncomfortable truth. Sometimes as leaders, we want that dependency to exist because it makes us feel needed. It makes us feel valuable. It reinforces our own sense of security and impact. But I want to tell you in this episode, the price of that approach is unbelievably high. Think of it this way. The single greatest measure of yours or my leadership is how much people grow under it. And if we use that measure, then we begin to see everything differently. Then achieving the goal is no longer the primary objective. The primary objective of the leader is to grow a team that can achieve goals like this again and again and again, long after we're no longer at the center. So here's a question. It's really worth sitting with. When a goal is achieved on your team, who truly owns that outcome? Now, like many of you, a couple of weeks ago, I watched an amazing football team win a national championship here in the United States. And when the coach was credited with the victory in the locker room later, he said something I will never forget as a leader as long as I live. He stood at the microphone and said to a room full of athletes and reporters, I didn't throw a single pass. I didn't make a block. I didn't score a point. Let me be clear with all of you. This win belongs to the team. You see, that's what it sounds like when a leader is focused on leading from within. And I think he would agree that leading that way can carry a cost. I mean, think about it. It costs us visibility. It costs us credit. It costs us the emotional reward of being praised as a great leader and allowing all of that spotlight to shine brightly on us. But what it creates is far more valuable because it creates a team that makes decisions and then owns the result of the decisions. How powerful is that? It creates a team that brings their best even when no one's watching. It creates a team that has unshakable trust by proving that they can rely on each other. And when all that work is done, when all the goals are achieved, all the rewards have been allocated out, and all the praise has been offered, and that team steps back to reflect on what has happened, they will say, as Lao Tzu said, we did it ourselves. And they will say that because real leadership isn't posted on a billboard. Real leadership isn't shouted from a megaphone. Real leadership never draws attention to itself. It's embedded in the mind and the heart of every person we've led. It's embedded in the judgment and the confidence and the ability of all the people that we have enabled to grow under our leadership. And I promise you this, while goals may fade, rewards may drift away, the difference we have made in the growth of the people we led is a legacy that will never be forgotten. I'm Jim Huling. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Execution Insights, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.